So I already talked about all of these different things, the ambient occlusion and these things. So, and the edit render settings and all of these kind of guys. So a little more detailed than that. I'm just going to switch to my visualize tab. One thing you'll notice in the environment editor is that this doesn't look anything like your existing environment editor in Alias, because you're editing a VRED environment, right? That's the VRED editor. That's what it looks like. So you've got a bunch of open tabs in here. Currently we can use a dome, a sphere, and a cube. You define your HDR right here. These are pretty simple things. You can say if it's on in the viewport or off. We use the same default HDR environment that VRED uses, so the materials will look the same. Of course, you're free to change that if you want. Shadows and illumination. So at default, it's 0. VRED has this option. Not everybody uses it. I find it quite cool, where I can turn on a shadow below the car or more, and it's looking up at the HDR. Pascal mentioned this. It's looking up at the HDR and it's finding the light sources and then casting a shadow. It's free. It's Vulkan's doing that work. So now I get a shadow below the car. What I've done here is, man, that sun is, light is bright. That light is bright. I've changed the map filter radius and reduced the map resolution from the default settings so that I get more of a filtered look. I don't need a perfectly crystal clear shadow on here. What we've tried to put in Alias from VRED and the VRED render is things that allow you to work with a designer, work with managers, show your model to represent what you're modeling. This isn't supposed to be, I'm creating a marketing image in Alias. We've put in the technology that we feel lets you model and produce something that's of decent to high quality. Okay. If I turn this to 0, the other thing that we could do is I'm going to pull up the light lister and I can turn on ground shadows using these lights. These lights transfer to VRED. All lights from Alias transfer to VRED that exist in VRED. VRED doesn't have an ambient light, so you can't transfer one from Alias to there. VRED doesn't have linear lights, which is like a fluorescent tube, so you can't transfer it to there. Spotlights, I think there's, I don't know how many out of all the ones that so point, spot, directional, and area, those will go. The other ones won't transfer via live referencing. So now that I've got this thing, right, I've just got these lights in this scene, and where are my lights? Show, what do I have them turned off? Oh, wait a minute, there they are. They're hiding up there. So, you can define your lights. If you move them around, I'm just gonna grab this guy and move it over here. It's directional, so it's not really gonna change if I move it, but I'm just casting that shadow on the ground. So you can turn those on or off. It doesn't really affect performance a whole lot. If you're fancy with how you light your scenes and things like this, you could use multiple colored lights and those have an effect in the scene. So I could switch this one to whichever, orange, and you can see I get that effect of maybe I put a warmish one, and then maybe I put a bluish one, and you can just get a little bit of warm cold effect. So the lights work in the VRED renderer and they transfer to VRED. Okay. Oh, this mouse is a killer. I think I hit, it's got a mouse wheel that's a middle mouse button and a middle mouse button. I apologize for breaking my mouse. I find that on this graphics card that's on this computer, this isn't that good of a graphics card. So some of these things tend to slow this laptop down because it's like a P1000, I think. Like it's, I don't have an awesome one. So, you might notice a little slowness on this little laptop. So you'll have a VRED user library. So this is where you can put your materials, and as you create new libraries, they'll just appear under your user libraries. So you can either drag from the VRED Asset Manager, or you can drag from your own library here. So I'm just going to drag a few things from the library. Left mouse button drops on one surface. Middle mouse button replaces. So I'm going to just do a pick object on this and do a right mouse button, if it will let me, and say assign to objects. You'll notice a little delay here. What it's doing when you get that little delay, when it's reading from a library that's on disk, it has to run through a material converter because it's a VRED material. It has to run through a material converter to appear in Alias. So that less than a second delay only happens when you're reading from a library. Once it's in the scene, then you're fine to you're fine to drag and drop it really quickly. So now that that's in the scene, I can easily apply that. I'm just going to pick this guy, get a few materials on here. No glass in there. Did you see a windshield in there? I had an interesting technique that I was going to show. Oh, there's the windshield. Okay. Yeah. I'll leave that on the side for now. So that windshield, I use a technique in that windshield. It's called a multipass material. So I currently have a metallic. If I want to put a sticker on the front of this car, I need to create a multipass material. If you're a VRED user, you'll be like, yeah, that makes sense. If you're an Alias user, you've never seen a multipass material, so you have no idea what that is. So I'm going to create a multipass, and I'm going to middle mouse button and put that on the silver. Why is it yellow? Because if you look down here, there are no materials. It's just a multipass. It doesn't have any material. You need to put materials in it. It's like a container, and then they're layered. So I will first put this on this multipass. So now the multipass has a metallic silver. And then I'm going to create a plastic, and I'm going to put that on the multipass. Okay, so now if I pick the multipass, I've got actually two. Sorry, shouldn't have done it twice. So I'm just going to right mouse button and say remove. So I've got metallic. I can right click on this and say move down. Now the plastic is on top, right? So you can layer things on top of one another. And now on that plastic material, I'm going to put a diffuse texture. So I've got the color. Doesn't really matter at this point. I'm going to use a texture, and I'm going to go find it. Okay, and I just put that texture on there. So now it's metallic car paint here with a texture on top of it. Well, why are there so many? Well, because that texture is a mapping type of triplanar. So I'm just going to make that planar. And then I have to tell it, well, I don't want you to repeat. I just want you to be a decal. Okay, so now it's 1. Now I need to place it correctly. So first thing I'm going to do is say keep the aspect ratio because I don't want to squish it. The illustrative people have been over there feverishly working on this decal. It has to be perfect. So I'm going to say manipulate, and this appears. Then I'm just going to click on a surface, and it orients to that surface. As I move around, it's going to change, change its orientation. So I want it to be maybe about right here. Now this does get a little tricky, and what I will say is the same as I was mentioning. Why didn't we have undo in soft proportional mod? I felt we needed to give people soft proportional mod. So the risk was, or the sacrifice was, Undo comes a little bit later. We wanted to redo these texture manipulators in Alias so they are similar to VRED. VRED is working on safe harbor statement, don't make any purchases, but we're working on enhancing those material texture manipulators. So we want to have Alias and VRED have the same manipulators, so we need to get this work done. It takes time. So for now, you get this texture manipulator. So I'm just going to grab this, and I'm just going to scale this up. It disappears, but the reason it disappeared is because of this Z value. It's probably below surface because that surface is crowned. So just raise this value and then it will appear, right? And I'm just gonna Alt key in that window and just make it so that it's a good enough value, and then I can just continue placing it. So if you wanted to be a little bit of perfection, I need that to be in the middle. So I just go to its placement and hit 0. Okay. And then maybe just increase that a little bit. Okay. All right. Next thing, that material. See how I have a nice shiny, and then that's a matte finish. So if I go to this plastic and I look up top, if I adjust this to black, it becomes black, but if I adjust it to pure white, it gets brighter because I'm not overriding the color of the decal with the texture. Tip: if you want to put an HMI display on a flat sheet like it's the controls in the car, don't map it to the diffuse channel, map it to the incandescence channel. Then you can brighten it beyond 1, so you can make that thing really bright if you choose to. That's a trick that I use in VRED to do that. The other thing that you can do, because what if I wanted this same gloss? This has got a nice gloss, this doesn't. Well, currently it's a plastic material. I want to change it to a reflective plastic material. And now it's got a sheen to it. So that is simply an image, a TIFF. I think it's a TIFF. It could be a JPEG, but it's just the image with a clear background. That means it's just only getting stamped on there, and anything outside of itself is just going to show the other underlying material. Now, another tip. And this is the same in VRED. That multipass material has to be rendered twice. So if I have that material assigned to, I don't know how many surfaces this is. Let me randomly guess. 375 surfaces. Let's say those 375 surfaces were 150,000 triangles. Well, when I put that multipass material on there, I'm rendering 300,000 triangles because I have to render both layers. Well, maybe I only should have put the multipass on these 10 surfaces and save myself 500,000 triangles, right? If you get into performance and you get a really large file, this is the same in VRED. You can look at it in the diagnostic or the statistics. So try to pay, if you want to be economical with your triangle count, you might want to pay attention to that. Okay, shader library, we've got VRED assets. I'm just going to go over here, I think, to miscellaneous, and just I can't use this mouse. So a tire material. So I'm just going to say I want to pick, I don't even know if I have this layered up. Yes, I do. I'm going to come in here and go under miscellaneous, and I'm going to try to find my tire material. So this just comes with the application. You can pick it, and I'm just going to right mouse button and say assign that to objects, and it makes me a tire. Oops, Alt L. And it puts a tire on there, right? I got tread and I got sidewall. So brings us to our next trick, which is Oh, this mouse. I got to stop saying that. I just apologize for the mouse. The next thing I want to point out is the little icon that you see. Now, the icons that appear on these materials, they're unique. So, right, you see the one that's got the little blue and orange. That means it's a multipass. So you can quickly look and judge what materials are in the file. So this icon that you see over here, that means it's attached to a material library. So if you have a VRED person who has set up a material library and you drag and drop into your wire file those materials that are linked to that library, that's what that icon means. If that VRED person is sitting over there, the color and materials person, editing those materials, and you come in tomorrow and they say, hey, I updated the materials, you would say, right mouse button, assets, reload from the library. And miraculously, your car will change to whatever they made changes. If they added more metallic, if they changed a whatever, all of those things will update, and they're controlling the materials. You're simply updating, right? Okay. Now, I can't modify this material. If you notice, everything is grayed out. So, I guess I could go home, but I want to modify it. Well, if you click this icon, you get this message. Do you want to modify that material? Because once you're finished modifying it, there'll be a button that says save it. So I can put it back in my own library. I don't need the VRED person to do that for me. I can do that on my own. Okay, so I just hit modify. Now I get access to all of this stuff. And I'm just going to simply, I've got it picked so it knows the geometry size. And I just hit fit. And once I hit fit, I now have, oh boy, it really turns down all my speed when the battery is fudge. That's why I noticed it slow. Okay, so that just basically, fit that material to all the different shapes that are in here. So it's fit the sidewall and it's fit the tire tread, okay? You know what, actually, I'm just gonna turn it off for now. Then I've got this brake disc in here. So very similar thing. I can pick this brake disc. I'm actually gonna pick it by layer. I'm gonna go to my shader library in miscellaneous. And there should be a brake disc in here, I believe. Oh, really? Anybody see it? No. Funny thing, neither do I. Metals? Yeah, there it is. Oh, you know what? That would have been an opportunity. I probably could go over here and I could probably hit search and I could probably type in brake and oops, if you spell it correctly, and then it just appears. Not smart enough. Right mouse button, assign. If you click it correctly, did it? Oh, there it is. And then a very, very similar process, right? You bring things from a library. You can see that this one I've modified, so it's orange. I want to take this one now. It's my brake disc. I'll grab this guy again, modify that material. Then I can get access to some things, and basically I just need to go down here and hit get center. And once I hit get center, I could go down here to the bump and I could increase the bump intensity, and then I get the look of worn out brakes if that's what you want. But yeah. Okay. What else should we, well, we got to be respectful of time. So I think that's a little bit beyond the basics of material. The other thing that I did mention previously was, so all of these materials have their own side component, right? So the Alias rendered version and the VRED rendered version Those are two separate sets of materials. So the alias representation and you can modify separately from the VRED representation. So right now, if the person on the VRED side is making edits, they're going to always overwrite your alias edits. So you have a box, a container, it's got two materials inside of it. But the material converter today, when it writes the VRED one, it thinks it should be writing an alias one, and it does. So if you've gone in and edited your alias one, the VRED person, when he saves his VRED version, he'll inadvertently overwrite your alias one. So if you don't want that to happen, use materials from your own library. This is something that we'll be taking action on in the future, and we'll have a button for probably in the general preferences that says either convert from VRED to alias so I get one that looks similar, or never convert. Then you could have completely separate materials. Okay. Live referencing. Let's switch gears for a second here. And well, maybe one more thing about these materials. And Pascal mentioned it. For headlamps, right? If you're working on a headlamp, I've designed a number of headlamps in my day. You really need to ray trace it to see what the actual lamp is going to look like. There's just no replacement. And even Vulkan, even if we had Vulkan ray tracing in Alias, you still can't use it. It actually, I suggest not using it on headlamps. If you actually want to review the lamp in VRED, if you turn on the rasterization ray tracing, it will hide things that are behind it. So not only will you not see it properly ray traced, you'll be bluffed into thinking that things don't show up behind this one because it can't ray trace past, you have a glass out here. This glass won't work like glass because I've already used up its one level. That's a Vulkan limitation. That's not a Alias or a VRED implementation. That's just a limitation on Vulkan rasterization rendering. Are they working on it? I've heard, but I'm not positive. So for visualization of an actual lamp, because I know these are very complex components that people put a lot of time and design effort into, they always have to be actually ray traced to see what's happening. And that's where live referencing can be pretty good. But I did want to show that you can simulate use it for what it will, but you can simulate using texture mapping. And I just built these up as examples. I was showing this to a person yesterday and they said, can you send me that wire file? I was like, yeah, I don't see why not. So I emailed it to them. So maybe in the future I'll see if we can get these put into the VRED Alias asset library so that you can just drop them, because these are basically just some materials that I made to represent different kind of glass optics and effects. So you have this 4mm fluting, then you have 4mm fluting in orange. I don't know what it's called in Europe, but we call this metallization. It's just a metallizing treatment. So I've made a couple of different versions of that. Then this is these are, by the way, these are just pretty simple vertical, and for some reason I just forgot the name of it. It's the red, green, and blue. What is that? What is the name of that? It's all too quiet. I can't hear it if you're saying it. They're just the pink to blue to red. What is that? Normal map. Thank you, Lars. I need a hand here. The power just got me off track. I just made some normal maps, and actually, I brought the geometry into VRED, rendered the normal map, so I have a high resolution normal map, and then just applied it as a bump texture, and it creates those flutes. Did the same thing here. This is a reflex, right? So when you see a bicycle driving by at nighttime and it reflects back at you, it's quite interesting because I had to model this to to do the normal map to make a good one. And it's actually quite interesting. So instead of just doing it, I phoned a friend that I know that works in the lighting field. It's actually a hexagon bar that's machined with 3 90-degree faces. So any light that comes in, bends 90 degrees, hits the other face and bends another 90 degrees and comes right back at you. I'm a Class A surfacing person. I didn't really investigate how reflectors on a bicycle work, but to model it, I had to figure out how. So then I just modeled a bunch of these hexagons with the faces shaved off, made a big enough sheet where I could cover a big area, and it's repeating so you can tile it, and it actually produces a pretty nice effect. And if you bring this into VRED and ray trace it, real nice. Looks real nice. Okay, so I made a bunch of these, and maybe in the future look for these to be shared out, maybe so that you can drag and drop them, because if you're just doing something quick and you don't want to get the actual thing from the lighting supplier, this can make your stuff look pretty good. Okay, and then I had a couple of just plain colors and some chrome and things like that. But it looks pretty nice, and imagine that when they're behind one another, they look pretty good. Yeah. Okay. Do a file open here, and let's move to random. Switching up a little bit, live referencing. So we're in the Alias renderer. So here's what Alias looks like. Then I'll switch to the VRED renderer. Okay, and I'm just going to see, it looks like I have ambient occlusion on, do I? Nope. Turn some ambient occlusion on. Get a pretty nice model here. So live referencing, just to reiterate, this is telling you useful information. So from top to bottom, the storage location. That's where it's going to be putting my cache file. And if you see, it says right there, resolved path in the wire header. So a wire file, if you right click on it and say edit with notepad, it won't be all gibberish. Well, 99% of it will be all gibberish. The first 10 to 20 lines are going to have things that you can read. And if you've gone and lost your cache file, you have no idea where it went, but an alias isn't there, whatever, you can always open it with notepad, and that wire file will tell you where it wrote its data to. We tried to build about 5 levels of redundancy to allow you to find this file. So the mode, it's currently disabled, right? And the source wire file is this file. And then you look at the wire header, and like this file has already been interrupt because the wire header says the same name as the file. If it had never been interrupt, that would say NA, not available. So there's multiple ways to tell if you've ever done something with this car. Okay, so I'm going to do something really quick just to break it, just so that I can show you what you have to do. So I'm going to go in here and grab this and delete it. Okay. How many people use the reference manager? Okay, good. You'll want to pay attention to this part. If I interrupt this, so I'm going to enable live. Oh, shoot, I should have launched VRED a while ago. Okay, scene, create a live reference. I'm going to hit the plus guy here, and I'm going to, so there the car came. So why didn't the reference come? Because I never sent reference objects. Why haven't they still come? Well, check over here, because are you updated? No, I'm not updated. So I hit update, then they come through. Okay, you have to turn the live referencing on, and number 2, it will only bring reference data in if you've opened the source file to the reference and hit enable. So you have to open the source file, this wheel file, and to do that, you would just do this. You see your source, you right mouse button and say open source, you see it in Alias and you hit enable live. That puts a cache file out there that when I'm in this file and VRED goes, okay, you got reference data, I know it's reference data, it checks to see if there's a cache file, and if there isn't a cache file, it puts it in the reference module, and you need to import it via the reference module. If you want it to come into Alias proper, you just need to open the source files. So from a user perspective, if you use the reference manager, when the individual saves his wire file to give it to you, just tell him to click enable live, and then he's going to create the geometry that you need. Okay, sorry for going over. I'll make some additional videos and we'll get them online. There's quite a few more details, but that's the basics of live referencing. And I think the reference manager is one of the keys that I wanted to point out for those of you using it. So appreciate everybody's time. Thank you very much.